Welcome to today's continuing legal education course. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. Your attendance will be electronically tracked. Please engage with the random prompts throughout the course to receive a certificate. A copy of the slides can be found in the Course Materials tab to your right. Presenter contact details are included for any follow-up questions. Upon conclusion of the session, proceed to the Credit tab to complete a brief evaluation. Your certificate will be available for download in the Credit tab after submitting the evaluation. Thank you for choosing Sprout Ed, the leading provider for continuing education for the next generation. Welcome to the Legal Reality of Reality TV, brought to you by Sprout Ed. Presented by Craig Conover, attorney and star of Bravo TV's Southern Charm, and Angela Angotti, partner at Bowman & Brook LLP and co-host of the Bravo Docket podcast. Thank you for joining. Please welcome Craig Conover and Angela Angotti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CLE, the legal reality of reality TV. My name's Angela Angotti. I've been a practicing attorney for 15 years, and I'm also the co-host of the Bravo Docket, which is a pop culture legal podcast. And I'm here today with Craig Conover. Hi, Craig.
Hey, what's up?
Welcome here. So excited to chat with you.
I know. I feel very honored to be invited to be here and to talk with everyone, talk with you.
I know you've got so much going on. We're so grateful to have you here. I know you were just in Vancouver and you've been running around and you had a charity event this morning.
Yeah, we were at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. I sit on the board of Hope for the Warriors, which has been a proud accomplishment that's come out of this TV career. And so we were doing like a gift drive.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so then I drove down here to be with all of y'all, and it's been fun.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, you've been on reality TV for over a decade. You're also an attorney. Tell us a little bit about that, like just growing up and...
Yeah, I'm from the Eastern Shore of Delaware. And, you know, we didn't really learn a ton of Southern history when I was growing up. And so when I had never heard of Charleston. And when I visited when I was 18 on senior week, which is crazy that that's even a thing, if it is anymore, I just fell in love with Charleston. So I went to undergrad there, and then I stuck around for law school, which I took a year between undergrad and law school because my parents were great. My mom was a school teacher. My dad owned a construction company and cleaning business, but I didn't have anyone as a mentor with schooling.
Right.
So I didn't know applying to law school was such a process.
It's such a process.
Which should be obvious, but I just didn't know. So I had about a year to figure out where I was going to go to school. I thought I was supposed to switch it up, but some friends that had moved away from Charleston were like, look, it's not always greener on the other side. Like, if you like where you are, stay there. So I went to Charleston School of Law, and then procrastination is something that I've dealt with my whole life.
I feel like any attorney understands that.
Yeah,
it's kind of, you need the stress of the deadline to get it done.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I've learned more about ADD in the last recent years than I ever have before, and maybe it's because we operate off adrenaline, like when the deadline's closing in. The school actually sold in the middle of the night before I had turned in my
Oh my God.
my thesis, my senior thesis.
Yeah.
So I was one credit away from graduating, and
From
then,
undergrad or from law school?
From law school.
Oh my God.
And
So it's so stressful.
Yeah, it was crazy. So then I was able to finish law school, but I'm sure we'll get to all that. But yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life when I went to undergrad. I thought my options were, med school or law school, with just the way that my brain worked growing up. I didn't know that engineering was a possibility too. And I had this I took a legal studies class in college and loved it.
Is that what first sparked your interest in really taking law school
Yeah,
seriously?
that was the first time between that class and I matched, this is crazy, but it's true. I matched the description of someone that they were looking for one night, and I was arrested, and then they found that person. And I got to experience the legal process myself, and everything worked out. But it was my first time that I realized the judge is, as we were speaking about earlier, just a referee.
Well, we respect the judiciary, but yes.
Well, I'm saying
the judge,
I thought that they were, because I had no experience in the legal field.
Right.
I went into that process scared of the judge.
Right.
like my teacher and undergrad was a judge also, and he told us about cases and
Yeah.
stuff, and I realized that it was an adversarial process, and is and a lot more fair than people might think. And I don't know, it just sparked my interest, and I tell people now.
So wait, you got arrested because they thought you were someone else?
Yes.
Do you know what crime that person was accused of?
No, I mean, there was like, I can only imagine.
Oh my God.
But I was walking home from a bar, so I got charged with public intox. And I was like, but I'm not causing like a public disturbance.
Yeah, there's no disturbing the peace.
I'm not endangering anyone. And
Right.
they said I was endangering myself by walking home alone.
Walking home?
Yeah. So, but what's cool is when I haven't really told this story, but when I went in to the courtroom, we went right up front, and my attorney was like laughing with the judge, but then they said, they didn't breathalyze me, and I didn't do any field sobriety tests, so they said I smelled of alcohol. And my attorney
They all say that.
my attorney was like, Your Honor, excuse me if I missed this in law school, but is it illegal to shower in vodka or swim in a pool of rum in the morning? And I was like, oh, I was so nervous. He was like,
been a bartender for all they know.
yeah. So it was a minor run-in, but it was an exposure to the process, and I loved law school. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I think you could tell the people in class whose maybe parents made them go, or
Right.
maybe like they didn't know what else to do, and law school for them is, I think, very torturous.
Yeah.
But it was the first time for me, other than my finance classes, that I really enjoyed what I was studying.
And it's like you're learning how the world works. And I always make jokes like it's almost like being a wizard. You learn how to say words and make things happen
Yeah.
or make things not happen. And it sounds like you're a lot like me, where I was first generation attorney. And so going to law school is like suddenly like you feel very empowered.
Very
Very
yes.
empowered. And then like you're saying being arrested, it's like you don't even really learn your Fourth Amendment rights. They don't teach you that in,
Growing up. Yeah.
They don't really teach you that. And so lawyers are the ones that have all the knowledge
Yeah.
and the power. You said you liked law school. What was your favorite class?
My first favorite class was contracts, and really enjoyed torts. Property law was
Torts
funny.
is fun because it has all of the,
Yeah, all the stuff that you've
Yeah.
heard about. Not property was funny because I liked the process of property rights and land. And I remember asking a question and being like, okay, but like, how do we justify
Yeah.
past the 1600s?
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, that's called conquering. We just wipe it away.
Yeah.
At that. And what was neat about Charleston School of Law was my professors were so incredibly talented. A lot of them had practiced around the country, and they had a chance to retire to Charleston and teach. And so, the school's great, but I knew that my diploma wasn't going to get me a job anywhere. But I was also learning from some very talented people.
Right.
Business associations was my first. I tallied that class, actually. That was
Yeah.
my
I
only
bet
one.
that helps you now with all of the stuff you have going on.
Yeah, I wish I wish I retained a little more of it, but our access to information now with the internet has changed everything.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
But it's funny because I was a finance major, and now that I'm at a point in my career that I could put into practice things that I learned back then.
Right.
I'm like, I kind of want to go back to class and learn that stuff. because
Right. Instead of having to learn it the hard way when something
Yes.
goes wrong.
Yes, exactly.
So you've been on reality TV for a long time, and it's become a really dominant force in entertainment, but not really everyone understands the structure behind the scenes. And I know we can't go into that a ton, but what's your experience like working with casting and the crew in reality TV?
Yeah, so to continue kind of my story, my second year of law school, this film producer came to town and said that they were making a docuseries in Charleston. What had happened is he sold his show idea about this show in Charleston to NBC. Really liked it. They wanted it for Bravo, their channel. And so Bravo didn't like the people on the casting reel, like the sizzle reel, but they loved the premise. And so they wrote character profiles basically and sent character scouts to Charleston, which sounds like an incredible job to me.
That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, and so they came to Charleston, and their job was to kind of embed themselves into the town. And I was approached to basically consult as this young 23, 24-year-old on this new show and show them around town. I didn't believe it was real. I thought this guy just wanted to, go out in Charleston and enjoy the social scene. But, they came from this glamorous background and had a huge home in Charleston, and we got to do nice dinners and stuff. And about 2 months later, new faces showed up from the production company and the network, and they were like, we've actually been scouting you this entire time.
Wow.
So they asked me to go to appear on camera, and it was something very similar to this. Again, you don't really think it's
Actually going to happen.
Yeah, because I just wasn't around production. In Charleston, we didn't really have it.
So where were you at in law school at this time frame?
I was basically finishing my second.
Okay, so you were a 2L.
Yeah, I was 2L. I was working at a personal injury firm at the time. I externed as in the public defender's office my first year because from my experience, I just thought I wanted to do that.
Well, that's what you see lawyers do on TV.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was kind of the opposite of you. I kind of hated law school until I was able to get an internship and get in the courtroom. And then I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
I like it.
So I was on some cases that I loved. I just wanted to I wanted to apply what I was learning in school to the real world. And I had a gentleman that I spent like hours with, but I guess it was just a month. And he had, I don't know how much we would want to go into it, but basically he was being charged with the murder of his baby, his infant. But his story to me was that the mother of the child had neglected his the child was very medically dependent on stuff. And so he was at work when he came home, the infant was passed away. And so he hid, they had found, again, I don't know if I should, everyone's an attorney. They found the infant in a barrel drum in concrete in the woods. But his story was that he did that to protect the mother. Like at that point, the child had already passed. I know it's dark and stuff, but that's
the stuff we deal with all the time.
That was the case I was given. And I spent.
So that's when you were a 2L?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was my 1L year.
1L, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I came into the courtroom one day, I had class, and I got there a little late, and he was taking a plea offer, and I'm like, what happened? And they were like, the test came back, and there was cement in the baby's lungs, which meant that the baby was alive when it all happened.
Oh
and
my
I was
God.
just like, I was like, it's too much for me. Like, I was too attached to everything, and I just thought I would have more fun going and doing the financial side of stuff.
Right.
And so I went to personal injury and got to do a lot of pharmaceutical, litigation support and stuff like that, and deal with insurance companies. And I really enjoyed that because I wasn't as emotionally, I could be emotionally attached at a healthy level.
Right.
So
Mental health for lawyers is so hard because we have to keep all the secrets.
Yeah.
We have to deal with really stressful cases, at client expectations, and then combine that with what you're doing. I mean, we'll talk about this more later when we get to the end, but I'm really interested because I think you probably have a lot of compartmentalization skills that a lot of lawyers would kill to have.
I was amazed. And my girlfriend's brother works at the public defender's office in New York State too, and the caseloads were crazy.
Insane,
and so selfishly, I just made the pivot to go intern at a personal injury firm, and they had this apprentice style game in the summer, and I worked really hard and I got the job. So I was really proud of that work, and I had been working there for about 6 months when I was offered this spot on this new docuseries.
Did you talk to your bosses about it? And
I didn't.
Were you afraid to tell them?
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started my podcast, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And that's such a minor thing compared to what you do,
I was convinced that I was deciding to leave to really kind of screw up any chance. I knew that I thought I was pivoting away from the law if I took this job. So I talked to my dean. She was a wonderful lady and older lady, and she was, I kind of explained to her the situation, and she was like, well, look, Craig, you live in a new age, kind of, and she was like, if you do this, you're not going to work for a defense firm anytime soon. But she was like, but there's always personal injury.
Right. I mean, it's an asset, really, in personal injury.
And I think, as television evolves, and we'll talk about that, like, it can be. And my boss at the time actually had been on TV. He had
Really?
he had his own like show where he was like a judge, like Judge Judy. And so he understood that world, but I was just scared to tell him.
I would love to be Judge Judy. It's
I
like my
couldn't.
dream.
I mean, she does great. She does
She's
great.
amazing.
So I eventually got to the point where I had never been faced with a decision like this in my life before, where I knew I wanted what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to take a chance and do the show, but I didn't know if it's what I should do.
Right.
And I still really enjoyed the law, but I was like, but I don't know if this chance, like, I never planned on getting into TV, but it was definitely probably a far off fantasy.
I think everybody, like, when they're younger, they're like, maybe one day I'll be on TV.
Yeah, but I was, I lived in Charleston. I wasn't going to move to the West Coast to pursue it.
Right.
It just found me. And so I came to the decision-making process of what would I regret more, not doing it and wondering what if, or doing it and dealing with the consequences down the road. And that was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
for
people
me.
have a really fixed idea in their head of how a lawyer should act and what they should do. And when I first started the podcast, I used to be afraid to admit to anyone that I watched reality TV.
Right.
But now I'm realizing we have so many attorneys that are like, thank you for this podcast. This is so great. And it's just nice to see that. And I think people really enjoy seeing you actually maintain your law license, and you're one of the few actually on Southern Charm that has like an advanced degree that you're still doing things with, because I know you do your CLE and all of that.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun ride. So I started when I was 24. I was finally allowed to take the bar in 2 years later when I finished my thesis, and I was fortunate that I was able to pass when I took it, but then it took a year for Character and Fitness to clear me because they didn't know what to do with me. They were like,
get anomaly. They probably hadn't dealt with.
And so I appeared in front of all 5 justices of the South Carolina
terrifying.
Supreme Court. Oh yeah, and you've got the cameras there and like the mics, and like it doesn't bother me on TV, but in that, I mean,
it's a different circumstance. They literally sit above you, and
Yes.
like they're judging.
it was crazy. And
Did they ask you a bunch of questions?
yeah, they were very curious as to what why it was called reality TV. I think they thought that that meant it was a documentary. When I had to explain that there was a lot of entertainment value there too, or like like only a small percentage of what we film is on there, and like contextually, like it's accurate, but they had a problem with 2 of my cast members one season had said that I stay out and drink too much and neglect my work duties. And because in the early seasons I was still working.
Wait a minute. You're telling me the South Carolina Supreme Court is questioning you about, so did they watch all of Southern?
I think they somehow were informed that my castmates were concerned with drinking behavior, or like that I drank.
Almost every attorney I know that is sober drinks.
There was some inner voices that I had to quiet really quick to be like, well, actually, no. But I had to just explain to them that, like, at the end of the day, yes, it's reality TV and stuff, but there is entertainment, and I can't control what other people say on there. They don't take an oath, is basically what I said. I was like, I'm not going to say that they were lying, but I don't agree with their analysis of my behavior, basically.
Also, it's hearsay.
Yeah, right. And then you start to be like, wait, why? You're not supposed to be basing this show. So it went fine, but I was very, very nervous.
Well, yeah, to do all that work and then to have to defend yourself from something, that just reality TV castmates are saying, and
well, and that was the decision I had made years prior. I'm going to have to deal with stuff that other people, that I wouldn't if I didn't do this show. So I was cleared like that day or the next day. And,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to like wait a long time?
No, I got like a phone call and it said, these are the dates you can invite your parents down. We did like a special swearing-in ceremony.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and then unfortunately though, you don't really hear about that on the show, because once it stopped being a detriment to my like character and then I passed, I was like, so are we going to cover this? And so for years, I still had people being like, are you ever going to pass the bar? And I was like, yes, I took the bar and I passed it.
I passed it, yeah. You passed it first try too, right? Yeah.
So it's been like, what's neat is that now I can go around and speak to people though, and they can relate to some of those years where I was like really trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. And a lot of those years really were not fun to have filmed. But fortunately, it allows me to have that. A lot of people, after they start a business or they start to do kind of well, better in life, they tell you that it wasn't always easy, but there's not footage of them messing up.
You can be like Exhibit A.
Right. And so I think people can trust my story a little bit because they can see where I was. I used to, I took too much Adderall. I started to take Adderall in my junior year of undergrad, and I went from being on academic probation to Dean's List. Then I got a scholarship at Charleston School of Law. And it turned a boring textbook into a page-riveting novel.
Right.
All of a sudden, I loved to study. And it was never really an issue because I always had something to study for.
Right.
And then I took the bar and I passed it. And then I didn't really have a reason to be taking my Adderall anymore. I mean, I was prescribed.
Right.
But, all of a sudden, that became a thing I had to deal with. And it was so internalized and so private.
Right.
And because, you're like, well, my doctor gives it to me. It can't be that bad. But so that's something that, I can relate to with people now. They quietly ask me a lot, in different industries or celebrities or athletes or whoever it may be. And there's nothing wrong with it. Just for me, it got to a point where it was kind of stealing my life a little bit.
Yeah.
I was a little more disconnected than I realized.
I've noticed, I've been very honest on my podcast about my struggles with ADHD and being an attorney. And, I feel like it does make you a little less creative. It makes you able to focus and do what you need to do. But I feel like I prefer to not have to take it.
Right.
And I call it a brain vacation, but I don't have to take it.
Well, it puts your blinders on and it makes you like the sniper on this one thing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that that's the one thing that you should be focusing on. And I had a photographer one time that he was a huge photographer, and he pulled me aside after our shoot. And he was like, Craig, it's affecting my relationship with my kids and my wife now. He's like, but are you as productive as you used to be? And I was like, no. No, but I'm happier.
Right,
and
right.
But now, since then, what I've realized is I actually am. I'm way more productive these days than I was back then because I have a routine that I forced myself to get into.
Can you talk about that just a little bit? It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I know I've got so many people that come to me and are like, how do you do your job? I have a fabulous legal assistant and a paralegal that help keep me in line, but you do have to have strategies for how you deal with it.
I have to be surrounded by a good team. I learned recently that there's a term for me needing someone around me all the time. It's like body doubling. If someone comes,
I have my husband do that all the time.
And if they're there, and even in school, I loved going to the library, but that's just because I was surrounded by movement and people. And so my life really changed when I found my two partners in a company that I started doing down south because they were able. I just work better. I get out of my own head when I'm not by myself, and I don't overthink everything.
Yeah, which is really hard not to do. So I'm going to go.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
my ADD bounces
we
everywhere.
Both have it. Yeah. It's totally fine. So you now have been on different shows with different filming formats, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that because I know that Summer House is more of a surveillance, I guess if you want to call it, type show. Yours is maybe more traditional filming.
Yeah, it's been cool because I've been able to take a lot of the thinking that you learn in law school and apply it to the production element of shooting. And so with Southern Charm, we shoot kind of like a movie. You shoot for 4 months, and it has to be structured because you have a production team there, right?
Right.
There aren't these drone little cameras that just follow you everywhere. You still have to capture what's going on in your life. And so I've become very interested in the actual capturing element. And so when we film, there's a big crew there, and they've become my favorite part of it because I've known a lot of the camera people and the sound people for I say people because I haven't figured out how to say cameraman, camerawoman, sound man, sound woman. I see them on other shows that I do. And so it's fun to show up and you're like, oh my God, because the people mic you and you have a very intimate relationship with them. The producer's job is a little more, I would say the producer's your protagonist, or they're your
Opposing counsel?
Yeah. The crew gets to be not, like, the crew doesn't care. They're there,
Right.
there to capture. The
Right.
producers are there to make sure you're not wasting everyone's time. Like, basically, if we were to sit here and talk about, Toronto, where I just was, and like what I was doing up there and everything, everyone here, it's like, all right, that's great, but we have 90 minutes to hear about this.
Right,
And so
right.
the producer's job is to keep you on track, even though you'd like to avoid some of that track sometimes.
Right.
And so our show is shot in a way that we get to go home, though. You shoot
Right.
for a couple hours and then you go home, but the filming process is a lot longer. On surveillance shows like Summer House and Winter House, the filming is more condensed, but there's surveillance cameras in the house. So for 24 hours a day, they're filming you. And I've gotten in trouble on those shows because I will film what I think is important, which again, no one cares what I think, but it's what I think because I've been around it so long that I think I
Right.
understand what the viewer wants
You're
to
a lawyer
see.
and a storyteller.
Yeah, lawyer and a
I
storyteller.
love that so much.
And you have to be a storyteller because you have to know which elements to bring in to
Right.
tell the story that you want to tell. And it's not a made up story. It's just like you have to capture everything that's happening in your life and somehow present it to the audience. And so sometimes on the surveillance shows, like, I'll have a lot of great conversations and stuff, but back then I still drank a lot. I didn't know how to film without drinking because it feels
Yeah.
awkward and stuff. And
I mean,
then,
I think people can understand that because even, people that aren't being filmed, you go to like a holiday party and it's kind of awkward and you're like, well,
yeah,
a couple
yeah,
drinks. Yeah.
exactly. And so by the end of the day, though, I wouldn't be in my prime form. And on Southern Charm, that wouldn't be an issue because by the time we've done everything, then we're going home.
You get to go home and go to bed.
Or people are going out and
Right.
stuff, but it's not captured. On a surveillance show, it is. And so it's very different. I think I prefer our way of filming, and people that do surveillance shows prefer theirs because what happens a lot on our show is you miss stuff.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's no one's fault, but we don't have the manpower to follow a whole bunch of castmates
Right.
that live in different houses every second of the day.
Right.
So, if something happens after filming, if everyone goes back to Shep's house or something and there's a fight, we then have to like download it, talk about it, and all this stuff
Right.
on camera. With surveillance, they capture everything. So there's pros and cons to each.
So was it easy for you to kind of adapt to the other style, or was that a big learning curve at first?
I went to, I thought it was, but just like, it was very similar to my first season on Southern Charm. I mean, you're just a baby. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And so you are just completely yourself, but I'm actually more transparent now than I was back then. But in the moment, you think you're being yourself.
Right.
And I think there's probably a business strategy to get people to like you a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they probably weigh in your favor your first season because if everyone hates the cast, no one's going to watch anymore. So what happens your second season is you really drop your guard and you go a little crazy because you don't know any better. And then you always get, it happens to most.
I think that's a very common thing.
Yeah,
The second
season is a tough one
That's
for
a tou-
people.
yeah, I think that's a
And
very
so
common thing.
You got to survive your second season. And what happened with me was then I kind of locked up a little bit my third season, and because I was trying to control everything. And what I realized was that actually hurts you even more because now the audience isn't getting to know you or your opinions about stuff at all.
Right.
And so fourth season comes around, and hopefully it doesn't take 4 seasons for most people, but fourth season, you've been in it long enough and it's become a full-time job for the most part. And you're just like, you know what? Like, I'm going to be totally me. And what I learned was the more that the audience got to see of the real me, which again, I didn't know I wasn't showing.
Right.
The better things were for me because, I was confident in I liked how I lived or how I carried myself. And so I think.
Well, and Bravo fans are so smart.
Yeah.
They are so smart. I think they're some of the most intelligent fans, and they pick up on everything. And it's just like a jury. Like they notice what's authentic and inauthentic very quickly.
Right. And so that's why I like doing so much outside of just principal photography. Like I do if they ask me to go do meet and greets or travel or at my store or like live shows or stuff like this, I enjoy it because I just like sharing it with everyone. I've been filming for 12 years now, and I think the more people get to know us, I think there's value in that. That's not to say that's for everyone.
Right.
Some people are liked more on TV than they probably are in real life.
I mean, there's some people that turn it on. I mean, I know some trial attorneys, none that work in my firm,
Right.
but they're just awful to be around. But the second they get in front of a jury, it's like they're a different person. And
No.
all of this charm comes out.
Yeah.
So I imagine it might be very
Yeah, that's
similar.
kind of funny. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess there's a performance, obviously, with that. Like,
I mean, it's
perform-
theater with a bunch of boring rules.
Yeah, and yeah, we don't have a ton of rules, but we do.
Yeah.
But what's funny is you have to be performative as being your genuine self and expressing your genuine feelings. But sometimes, and a lot of times, like if you come on and you're being fake and just doing stuff because you want to be on TV, like it's not sustainable.
No, and the fans know it.
And
Like
yeah, it
they pick
doesn't
up on it
last.
so quickly. But okay, so speaking of that, speaking of rules, so you are a lawyer on reality TV. How have your experiences in front of the camera, I guess, influenced your understanding of the legal side of reality TV? And the other thing I want to ask is, do your cast members and new cast members, do they ask you to look at their talent agreements before they sign them?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely in the camp of, like, I knew everything that I was getting into. I don't want to say, like, victim mentality, but I just didn't grow up with it.
Yeah.
I grew up playing team sports, and, like, for me, like, if you dropped the ball, it had consequences, but I was the one that dropped the ball. I didn't, like, blame it on the sun or anything. And
Right.
I guess the point of that is, like, when I signed up, it was a personal decision of mine. No one was forcing me to join this show, and I was doing it because I knew that if you got to a certain year, it could become a good living. You could make a
Right.
good living out of it, and I could do good with that. Like my third season, I was able to help sponsor this orphanage in Haiti, and like we would go to Port-au-Prince, and I was like, this is why I do it. Like this is, and I really jumped all in. If I do something, that's on me. And like, there's been times where like I didn't think the context was fair. I think the first time I ever went to therapy was because contextually I thought something was like unfair, but that's the job.
Right.
Like there was no like signing up saying like, I will always be portrayed in the best light possible. And like, I will never be mad about anything. If you can't handle it, then don't watch. And so that's the take I have on it. You're compensated. Like that's the job.
Right.
You could go work somewhere else if you didn't like it. So people do come to me on new seasons and stuff and ask me for advice. And my advice to them is actually to be yourself. Because if you don't speak on a certain story, or if you don't speak on a certain happening, someone else will.
Right.
They are interviewing 7 other cast members.
Right.
So you might as well tell your story so that people have a chance to hear your point of view. And it took me too long to figure that out. So with contract agreements, I mean, it's exactly probably what you think. Like it's nothing's hidden. Like you're signing up for, what you're signing up for, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they do. I've researched them quite a bit, and there's a lot of them that are public. I'm not going to go into any Bravo ones for
Right.
obvious reasons, but a lot of the ones that I've looked at, like from The Bachelor and other, shows, they make it very clear that we can, make false statements to you. We can make
Right.
misrepresentations. It's almost like when the police separate two people and tell them, hey, the other person said blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's, and it's in the contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair game, and it is a game. I have found in my experience that it's, if you do your best and if you're honest, you're treated like the same. Like, I can't speak to Bachelor Nation and stuff. To me, that would be a really tough world to be in. You watch the show Unreal, which is a crazy show that's based on that world. For ours, Bravo is more about sustainable storytelling. They invest a lot in their cast members because they want to follow your life for the next decade, hopefully. So sure, there's times where you're just like, that, again, in your head, it might not be the exact way things went down, but that's why you are compensated. You're not doing this stuff, for free.
Right.
And again, it's a choice. And I think that's what comes down to it. And, there's been seasons where I haven't watched because I'm more at peace.
Well, in the court cases I've looked at, it's fascinating, and actually one of the major cases in federal court that is cited for a lot of these things comes from the show The Bachelor, and it was essentially them saying, like, yes, this is unscripted, but our choice of what to use from the unscripted material is First Amendment protected. So when people were making claims on The Bachelor saying, hey, this isn't as diverse as it should be, they fought back with First Amendment protections. And because, which to me says there really is some art to it, right? Like, this is their speech for what.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of what we do. I actually sometimes, it's funny, I feel like reality TV has become such a huge market now, which is great. But there's so many different shows. But sometimes I like to say that I'm in like unscripted television, you know, because I think there's a difference between someone that would rather just like, that doesn't participate. Like I consider myself good at it because I participate. Like if there's a game to play or an event, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna dress up.
You're gonna show up and you're gonna,
and I'm gonna make, I guess the way that I make good TV is by participating and being myself.
Speaking of that, I want to talk about Sewing Down South. So a very real and genuine storyline on Southern Charm was you picking up sewing, right? And I think, was that why you were studying for the bar, or why?
While I was studying for the bar, yeah.
And so if you could talk about how that sort of translated into Sewing Down South, like you picking that up while you were studying for the bar, which I completely understand, and I think the lawyers watching understand. When you're doing something that's so in your head, it just feels so good to actually see physical evidence of something you worked on and the time you spent. Yeah.
So I grew up, I'd come home from practice and I'd watch like Alton Brown on Good Eats and Emeril Lagasse, and I loved to cook. And since my mom was a school teacher, she was perfectly happy with me cooking, and if she didn't have to. And I loved to garden. And we learned to cook in home ec. I was fortunate that home ec still existed back then. A lot of schools there's not, and we're trying to bring that back. But they say they need a curriculum to go with the sewing machines we're donating, and I'm like, it existed for so long.
You're donating sewing machines?
Yeah, we donate sewing machines to different
so great.
Care programs and stuff, and create rooms. So I learned to sew too, and so when I was studying for the bar, I got this sewing machine. It was a $200 brother from Amazon, and it embroidered too. And what I learned later in life, some psychologist came up to me at one of our events, and she's like, you love to create. She was like, that's why you love to cook and garden and build stuff.
Yeah,
and
you're like Martha Stewart.
Well, trying to be, right? The next male Martha Stewart would be awesome.
I love her.
Yeah, she's great. So, she created an empire.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to make clothes, but I had never been taught how to make clothes, and it's extremely difficult.
It's so hard. People don't realize how hard sewing is, and it's so much math, and it's so precise. It's architecture where all the pieces move.
Right.
And they have to look, it's crazy.
It really is. And so I thought everyone would think me getting a sewing machine was cool, but my girlfriend at the time really was intimidated by it. I think she was worried about what the public might say. She had kind of let the critics get into her head. And it's like, I grew up being bullied really bad. And so the good thing that came out of that was I had to self-validate in high school. So once I got to reality TV, I was like, you guys, like I've already dealt with like way worse than this. Which is funny because when I signed my contract to think how much bullying shapes your life, I actually was thinking, I hope they have like TVs in jail so some of those guys will see me one day. And I was like, I can't believe that this is still following me. We ended up breaking up, and I had to leave my garden and workshop behind because we lived together. And I took my sewing machine, and all I remembered was how to make a pillow from home ec. And the first pillow, so you make a pillow inside out. And when you pull it right side out, I just got this like euphoric feeling, like it just felt good.
Like I made something I can see.
Yeah, and it was tangible, and I could feel it. And so I started to sew even more, and kind of posted it online, but not as a sewing post. I think I was like watching like the Disney Channel on a Sunday and was like, oh, like lazy Sunday.
You're so wholesome.
But again, it's one foot in front of the other.
Right.
And people were like, please tell me you sewed those pillows. Like, I would love a Craig pillow. And I just thought it was different enough to work. So for about a year, I said I was going to sell pillows. I sewed a lot of pillows, but none of them. And I had plenty of offers in my inbox on Instagram for like people offering to pay for my pillows. But I never shipped one out because they weren't good enough in my head. I didn't know how to ship something. I didn't know how to take an order. And so it wasn't until my partner called me and we went to college together. He was like, do you need help with this? And I was like, yeah. And I'm not working with anyone. But him and his sister-in-law wanted to split the company in thirds equally. But I grew up watching Shark Tank, and so didn't think I was ever supposed to give away 50% of the company.
Right.
So I called my dad, and he was like, look, Craig, do you want 100% of this $100 company?
Of nothing or?
Of nothing.
Yeah.
Or of still a great piece of something that might really grow into something. And it was the best thing I ever did. So we split it equally, which in hindsight is how it should work.
Right. Everybody has an equal investment in it and equal desire to make it work.
And and so the three of us started Sewing Down South as a home decor company, and we make our pillows in the Carolinas and our candles in Charleston, and now we have a store in Charleston, store in Nashville. We do Kroger's private line with Kroger's, so SDS for HD Design. If you go into one of their home stores like a Fred Meyer or Kroger Marketplace, we do their towels and sheets and cookware and stuff. So
that's so cool. So your deal with Kroger, is there anything that you can tell us about the contract or the business deal structure that you have that was interesting to you? Or
there is a a morality clause that we were really held up on.
Kroger wanted a morality clause?
Yeah, we have a morality clause with Kroger. And it took Jerry, so my partner Jerry
also... actually explain, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows, but just in case, explain how
a morality clause is basically, says that my personal behavior, and then it can affect the deal, basically. Like, it can nullify the deal or void it or whatever.
Right.
I've been out of contracts too long.
Arrested or convicted of a crime.
Yeah, well, most of the time morality clauses are like...
Did it have the words moral turpitude in there?
Oh, I don't know. But a lot of times they are for reasonable stuff.
Right.
Like if you are caught on, like if you are doing like an interview or a press or something and you say something egregious.
Right.
Or if you get a DUI or like drug charges or something, like things that your parents would put you in timeout for, but that you get in trouble for, they can basically be like, we don't want you representing the face of our company anymore, so this deal's over.
Right. By the way, I'm convinced that's, we don't have to talk about this, but I'm convinced that's why Jen Shaw waited to plead guilty from Salt Lake City for so long, because I think she wanted to keep getting paid, and I'm sure there was if she had...
Oh, I don't even know if we have... Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's my theory.
I now have an agent, that Jerry is my agent because he runs a sports marketing firm, that he does all the contract stuff. But with Kroger, I understood that. I was like, well, yeah, if I don't act right, of course. I carry myself at a higher level. This is an international company. But they had... Well, I don't know what the rules are with them, but one thing that we were held up on was they wanted to include things that happen on Southern Charm. And I was like, well, we just can't, because
you don't have control over that.
Yeah, I can only control who I am and how I act as a person. So everything else is fine. And yes, even though the show, those are my actions, we don't have final say over everything that happens. So that was the one thing that we had to be like, look, guys, I understand if I get in trouble on my own, but we can't have too many denominators here or layers between us.
Yeah.
So now we're doing a line with Belk, and I'm sure there's a morality clause in there too. I mean, no one wants to work with someone that goes off and gets in a whole bunch of turns into a bad boy.
That's fair, yeah. But I'm glad that you were able to negotiate out of the actions of the other cast members.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it was.
Right.
I'm a very, and sometimes it probably doesn't seem this way, and honestly, that's probably my fault, because I was going to say I'm a very accountable person now, and I almost said, but it didn't always look that way. Well, no, part of accountability is I wasn't always an accountable person.
So you are accountable.
Yeah, and I did mess up a lot in those early years, and not.
God, we all did. I'm so glad I wasn't on TV
Well,
when
yeah,
I in my early 20s.
Yeah. So now I read something at the beginning of last year that was like, make everything your fault. Like everything that happens in your life, make it your fault.
It's the locus of control.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could make an excuse for anything. Like everything had an explanation. Maybe not a justification, but everything had an explanation.
Having that power is good because as an attorney, you're always advocating for someone else. So, whatever you do with your career, maybe when you stop wanting to be on TV, that attribute is actually very good because you just got to turn it on other people.
Well, exactly. When it comes to self-accountability,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not because you can make an excuse for everything. And so that really stuck with me. And now that's kind of how I try to live my life. Like if something happens to me, I just make it my fault.
Right.
I know not every single thing's in your control, but so with the morality clauses, I was like, yes, I'll sign to what I can control, but not others.
Right. That was smart. So as a trial attorney that does jury trials, it's like you are wanting to get a point across, but you still have to be authentic. So I think it might be helpful, and a lot of lawyers would like to know, when you have Sewing Down South in the show, and it's very clearly a big part of your life, how do you kind of keep that authentic and not make it look like just an advertisement? Because it is something you deal with day to day.
Right. No, I will. And what's funny is, on the last question though, I think as lawyers, we all live by a morality code anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of our oath, isn't it? So it's
it is.
basically like, it's very similar to things that would get me in trouble with my license anyway, I can't do with the company. So, so Sewing Down South, fortunately, so much strife was captured on the show. It really did lead to a breakup amongst other things. No one in my life, and I speak about this when I talk about business, no one thought I should sew. No one thought Sewing Down South was a good idea. Everyone was like, you should just go practice law. But at the time, I was on TV full time. I didn't have time to take clients. I don't think I ethically could have given them the amount of time that was required for their case. I had a law firm for a little bit where I had partners and stuff, but if I do something, I want to do it right. And so with Sewing Down South, no one thought I should do it. And now
I remember that actually from the show.
So now when I talk to people, I'm like, just because no one in your life can see that it's a good idea doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And Damon John actually talks about it, from FUBU and Shark Tank. He says, he actually told us on our podcast one time, he was like, don't talk about business. I think he said this, but don't talk about business with your closest circle sometimes.
Yeah.
Go talk about it with someone that's done it already, because sometimes the ambition is intimidating to people and it makes them nervous.
Well, and I think people, when they think of attorneys, they have a very narrow viewpoint of what an attorney is. So they're like, why are you sewing pillows? Why are why'd you work so hard to do that when you're doing this? And it's like, I'm still a fully well-rounded human being with a lot of interest in other things that I like.
And it allowed me to take bigger chances in other careers, because I'll always, knock on wood, have the law to fall back to. And I still have a huge love for it. But so with Sewing Down South, as it started to turn into a successful company, the catch-22 is it's going to be featured less on the show. I fully understand that they can't just come film at my warehouse and make Southern Charm a commercial for Sewing Down South.
No, is that production, or is that you being keeping it separate?
I think it's me understanding that it wouldn't be good for the show.
Right.
I think there's a mutual understanding there. If I only would film in my place of business, it's just not how stuff works.
Right.
You have to trust the process and that there's a balance. And so yes, every once in a while, when I think something's interesting enough to have on TV, then sure, I would love for it to be filmed and hopefully make it.
Right.
We opened a new store in Nashville this year, and fortunately, we filmed me going to Nashville, which I was like, there was some pushback because filming outside of Charleston's expensive, wherever your crew is based. But I was like, guys, I'm opening it's my second store, and this is a company I started on the show.
Right.
This is something that viewers would like to see. This isn't self-serving. This is, it's good for me, but I was like, also,
this is your reality.
The viewers are going to know I opened this other store, and they're going to say, why aren't we seeing this?
Right.
And so I think for the better, I think in a production purposes too, that it's good for the show. If I would have just started a random company that had nothing to do with Southern Charm, it would be a lot harder to like hawk products, basically.
Right. No, I think it worked, and you've been one of the few that's been successful in starting something and watching it grow because it's so authentic.
Yeah, it's real. It's what I do when it's what I do on a daily basis anyway. Now, fortunately, I have a great team and I have
love
partners.
the paint collection, by the way.
Yeah, that's great. She's got an awesome eye, and we've moved. We have coastal chic, but she only has black and white in her house. My girlfriend. So. It's been fun, and I think there's like a fairness there. But yeah, sometimes I have to advocate for myself with like, hey guys, I know, sewing down south isn't that exciting because something might not go wrong, but it also might be, and my employees are great, and like and this is my like life now.
It's your reality.
Yeah.
It's your life. So speaking of sort of speaking on your own behalf, or like how do you keep creative control and brand alignment when you're working with major retailers?
It's just part of our non-negotiables. We've worked really hard to create the brand that we have. I grew up, I was in small business management in high school when Under Armour came out, or maybe middle school. And I remember when the wealthy kid was the only kid that had Under Armour on for that first 2 seasons probably that they were out. So as Under Armour became more affordable for everyone, it didn't get any less cool that everyone on the field was wearing Under Armour. Now, nothing against like Kia's, but when Kia tried to go from this side up into luxury, they had to rebrand and kind of like name it something else.
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to start with a quality product because I knew people were gonna buy, that we bought a Craig pillow and it was like some like souvenir thing.
Right.
So we put a lot of effort into quality control and design. And so I was like, I can sell them their first pillow because they're a fan of the show, but I can't sell the second. They're only gonna buy our second product if they're happy with the first, which is just like in law, you can handle their first case.
It's a results-oriented business.
Yeah, like
meritocracy.
You're not gonna like get their business anymore if you don't do a good job.
Right.
And so that was one thing with like when we went to Kroger is we were becoming more affordable with another line, which was a way to share with more people. We didn't start with a super high price because we didn't want to outprice everyone that was rooting for us throughout the years. But, to make stuff in the States and the quality that we do, it's still an expensive pillow. And so that was something that we pay a lot of attention to is the products that we put out in these private labels. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we call it, it's still going to be Craig's company or Sewing Down South.
Right.
And so we do all the design, which is a heavy lift, but we have people in position now for that. And we have about 25 employees, I think, now, and a lot of them work on private labels. And we're doing something with Belk right now, and their team's been fantastic. But, they still present everything to us, and we touch it and feel it. And so we, fortunately, we operate from a place of power. I don't know if that's silly. Operate from a place of power where we're happy to work with people, but
you don't have to.
Yeah, but we don't have to.
So is there anything, with knowing what you know now and with your law degree and everything, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of legal preparation when starting Sewing Down South?
Jerry probably has 33.34% of the company, and I probably only have 33.33. But fortunately, we've been able to evolve. Like we just switched our, corporate structure. We just, went to a C Corp from an S Corp. I think that happens with like growth. I don't think you can do everything at first. Our employees that started with us are very important to me, and it makes going into the office fun for me. They got to know me when I was still like crazy and trying to grow up myself.
How many employees do you have now?
Like 25.
Wow, yeah.
And we've got probably like 10 full-time employees. And
so you're dealing with payroll, you're dealing with, HR, all that stuff.
So we have a fractional CFO. And we never accepted any money into the company. So we don't have any debt, which is nice, but Jerry's so strict about like our healthy books that sometimes I'm like, we could pay ourselves like a little more, like bonuses.
Yeah.
I like that we're now getting into giving equity away. My brother just learned about ghost equity. I didn't know about that, where like like the employees still, I guess it's like a bonus
Yeah,
basically. Okay.
yeah.
I just put that together. But I really want to give out like fractional, shares into the company. But, and I'm doing more deals now and influencing that have like shares associated where I'm like, I don't fully trust the other companies sometimes. I'm like, yeah, but what if you like issue another 1 million shares?
Right.
Like, I need to get my 5% of that too.
Right.
So like I'm always present to say we need to structure this right for, the employees that are getting it so that it's fair. And
So that's another question I have is that how do you handle the challenges of being a public figure while protecting the confidentiality and integrity of your business dealings? Because have you found when people come to negotiate with you, they've already watched the show and they think they know who you are?
Yeah, it's a lot of checks and balances. There's always like NDAs and stuff, and I know this sounds silly to say as a lawyer. I just don't have a ton of faith in them because I think they're good to have, and everyone in our life has them, and corporate and stuff, but people love to gossip. I mean, what's more fun than like gossiping with your friends? Like as attorneys, we have a higher level of that, right? Like even in law school, I took like attorney-client privilege so seriously, and when I
As you
worked
should,
with,
yeah.
Well, you have to,
You have to,
right?
yeah.
But we also have to be realist and think to ourselves that, at least I operate in a way that it's good to be prepared, and it's good to trust people, but not like 100% in these dealings. Like, you can have all the NDAs signed that you want, but I'm still not going to present my way in a manner that I wouldn't want shared with other people.
Right. I mean, we hear about NDAs all the time. I've been litigating for 15 years and I haven't really seen anybody litigate or try to enforce one. So it's like, I think people do respect them, but it's also like, how do you even...
I think you still shouldn't operate that it's like,
don't count on it, is what you're saying.
Like attorney-client privilege, you'll lose your license if you do that. But then a financial penalty isn't that big of a deal. I still think you should use them. But for us, a lot of times, like Amanda and Jerry will, like it won't get brought to me until we're serious about doing business with them. Even with hiring, like I can't be involved with the hiring process, which stinks because it's a liability. Like if I'm involved, and it brings in a whole bunch of issues that people could say. And so there's a lot of checks and balances that we use. And then I do generally just like to operate in a way that at a level which you got to hope that people respect and trust.
Right, with some integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, general decorum and integrity and hopefully, it works out, but I'm very careful with like, even my assistant, like they know me very well, but I still try to operate as a professional figure as much as I can.
Right. So that's another thing that's interesting because you have an impressive personal brand that goes beyond Southern Charm. And I'm not sure, we've kind of talked about this a little bit or touched on it, but from a legal perspective, how has your time on reality TV influenced your approach to protecting your brand, like, and managing your personal brand? Because that is who you are, but it's also not a caricature, but it's people's understanding of the image of you, and you do have to protect that.
Well, I think it's the old saying, but it's very true. Like, a reputation takes, years to build, and
you can destroy it. Yeah.
Yeah,
As lawyers, we have to protect our reputation so much because that's really all you have. If the judges get a bad reputation of you, opposing counsel, all of that, it's a huge problem. So, but
and that's how I operate, which is probably from reality TV, which is like, it's a roller coaster. Some seasons, especially early on, like, after a decade, people tend to know who you are, but also like it takes one bad season for people to turn on you.
Yeah. People's opinions change so.
Yeah, they can be finicky and fluid.
When I do, like, for a lot of my clients, we'll do mock trials or focus groups where we test certain things. It's always fascinating to me. Like, there's one where we do where they have dials where they turn up or down depending on if they like what you're saying or they don't. And I feel like it's very similar to people watching reality TV because it's like 1 second you're like, I love that person, and the next one people are like, I hate that guy, and it's
and so you can't put too much pressure on it so that you stress, because I know people that are like, if the audience turns against them, they freak out, or like, in general, the loudest people though, like don't represent the majority of people at home. Most people aren't running home to
Get on
make
the internet
slanderous comments on like Reddit,
to go be a troll.
And if they are, that's fine, but like you shouldn't let it affect your well-being. But I do know that the people that carry themselves the right way, and that put effort into being kind with fans and like taking business serious and even being professional when NBC asks you to do stuff, or like we go to Bravo Con and don't get drunk all weekend. Like instead, like you are there 7 a.m. because other talent didn't accept the offer and you changed 3 times and like
That seems like so much work.
It is.
I mean, we were even like, we go to BravoCon and I'm like, I hope they don't do it every year because it was a lot. Just
Yeah, but see, I like, it is a lot, but like I love it because to me, like that's my career or like a big part of my life. And I like the ability to outwork someone. So like in reality TV, like you can outwork someone. Like, there's no playbook for it. Some people aren't going to be nice to everyone that comes up to them. Some people are. And like, it might take a while, but it does like add up.
Right.
The fear and I think the anxiety that comes with it is it takes like, a couple bad interactions and could that all come crashing down?
Right.
I don't want to find out.
Right, because that could affect your businesses, your charities,
right.
all of
like
that.
If people stop rooting for me, they're not going to be excited to buy from our brand or support the charity. Like I now represent a lot of entities, I guess.
Well, and you're employing a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
and
that's a lot of pressure.
No, that's exactly right. And so you'll see it a little bit on the new season, like about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I really stopped. I changed my relationship with drinking. I just kind of stopped. I'm not sober, but like I really don't drink anymore. And what that did was all of a sudden my energy into my work went through the roof. Like I didn't know that I didn't have mornings before. I was up, but like I didn't know that my brain was like recovering.
Right.
Because everything I did was a social event. Like I didn't know how to do this stuff without it. And all of a sudden I started to make more money and I started to quantify not drinking. And I had a great run for like 15 years, 16 years. But with that, I killed off, I just kind of put to bed a part of my personality that some of my friends really liked. They really liked the guy that was out with them. And I didn't realize that so many people in my life would have a problem with me starting to grow in a different direction.
Yeah, when you start to kind of move forward and other people aren't moving forward in the same direction, they take it personally.
They do, and I guess I get it, but I didn't see that happening. And so, with like, when you start to spend more time with your work or businesses or like being an attorney, you all can be in the office for hours and hours and hours and hours a week. Like not everyone's going to understand it, and that's okay because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for their approval. And so I do like the opportunity to the harder I work, the better I'll be.
Right. So for attorneys that are looking to branch out into entrepreneurship, I'm not saying give legal advice, but what sort of legal suggestions or business advice would you offer based on your own journey?
Yeah, I would just say just do something. And so for me, I was so stagnant and in my own head for so long. I was like on my 5th season of the show, and I was like, how do I not have a product yet? How have I not started a company? Unfortunately, my 6th season, I finally got an idea, but again, I couldn't get out of my own way until I got partners. What I'll say is even if no one understands your idea, just do it. Don't feel guilty spending time on your side hustle. I know you have a primary career and job, but you only live once, that we know of, and everyone's trying to figure it out for the first time.
And in 100 years, we're all going to be dead and no one's going to remember.
So do what you want to do. Etsy, and there's so many sites out there to do to sell your crafts and start your careers. I mean, I talk to a lot of attorneys come by and they'll just say stuff, and hopefully we can inspire people to do. I mean, I know you have to have that primary source of income, but Vera Wang she didn't make her first dress till she was 46.
Right.
For me,
she was a figure skater too.
Yeah, I just So, it's a simple saying, but tomorrow's the first day of the rest of your life. I mean, that's what really got me through my like rut. And then it's since then been like, be better next week than you are today. Just one foot in front of the other. And if you have an idea that you're sitting on, it was always overwhelming for me to see how I would get to what my goal was. So I had the idea and I had my goal. If I would have just been able to break him down into little goals, like, okay, by next month, I want to have this done.
Right.
Like actually write your goals down, which isn't rocket science, but I wasn't able to do that stuff until I got a partner.
Yeah.
So
I
finding
think the right people to work with sounds like
100%,
good advice.
and especially how much time being an attorney takes. Like, find a partner that you trust and will be fun to work with.
Yeah.
And just have them help you.
So you've really done an amazing job of scaling your small business. Do you have any advice you can give for other small business owners for the legal complexities of scaling a business?
Well, I guess the real answer is we hired the right people to do that. Because, like, yeah, I passed the bar, but I haven't scaled a corporate entity. Like,
right. Well, just like I'm not going to do probate law. I don't.
Right. And so we hired a good law firm, and they do our legal work. I mean, I think it's fun. It's not fun because we've gotten sued a couple times and like cease and desist orders for like one of our like favorite hoodies that we ever made, like sweatshirts, and Andy Cohen wears it all the time, and we don't make it anymore because of the cease and desist we got from like a huge company.
Was it a copyright thing?
They just said, yeah, I guess so. They said that our sweatshirt looked like theirs.
Okay, Margaret Josephs on The Real Housewives of New Jersey was in litigation for such a long time. We did a whole podcast episode about it because of like the little whale for Vineyard Vines, and she had it was a whole mess, and she actually, that was just fascinating to how she ended up handling it.
Well, on this particular matter, we bought it from a company that makes blanks. They were different colors and different amount of stripes on it, but I was like, guys, they're just sending this because they expect us not to fight it. Like, they're not right. Like, as a matter of law, they're not right. And Jerry was like, cool, we're just not going to make that sweatshirt anymore.
Right,
and I'm like,
it's just easier to not do it.
He's like, we're not paying the law firm to defend this so you can continue to sell this sweatshirt. And I'm like, but it's a principle thing. Like, they're not right. And
it's one of those things like, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective?
Yes.
Do you want to win or do you want to win at life?
Well, and again, that's where the partnership comes into play, because
So listen to the people you trust.
Yeah, and I've got this sense of justice where I was like, well, that's not fair. That's not fair that they get to send that and just stop us from doing this.
Yeah.
But it would have cost way, way more money to fight it. Now, I'm sure there's going to be things in the future that if they, threatened our actual, company or the way we do business, then obviously we will fight. But making this one sweatshirt that kind of looked like another company's. So now I just have to get Andy Cohen to wear one of our other sweatshirts instead of the one that we don't sell anymore.
I mean, I get that, because it has to be so frustrating. Because you're not right, and then you have that fight in you, but you're like, it's not worth the battle.
It was like a stupid badge of honor to feel good about, though. When you get sued for the first time, you're like, all right, maybe we're doing something right.
Wait, so I'm being nosy now. So, what other lawsuits have you had?
It's just it's product based.
Product liability stuff?
Yeah, and it's interesting because people sell stuff with my quotes on them all the time, and we haven't done anything about that. But that always I'm like, but wait, that's my quote, what I said, and you'll see it sold on
That's
Etsy
kind of
or
a
whatever.
catch-22, because it's you want people to like and want to buy your sayings, but then you're like, but that's mine, and I'm not making any money off of it, and they're using my likeness or my words.
I think and Shep uses my name for everything that he sells. It was Craig is my lawyer or whatever. And at one point I was like, we have to serve him a cease and desist at this point. But I think if it ever started to capitalize on your market, then you have to pay attention
If
to
you
it.
make the "I'm a lawyer and a storyteller" shirt, I will buy it.
Well,
I will buy that
so
hoodie.
someone is making that already.
Amazing. I want it.
And we're not though. So someone else
Someone else is already making it?
And
You need to make that.
And someone bought it and they sent it to me like, we'll always support you. And I was like, but I have nothing to do with that company.
You need to put that on your website because
Yeah,
I'd buy it right now.
I have a text thread on my phone because I didn't want to just like make merch that said the quote, and my partner Amanda was like, so can we make it now? And I was like, maybe. So we might be making it. But yeah, so the lawsuits, it's basically just product-based stuff.
Do you have people trying to actually serve you with process?
We got sued for our website accessibility, which I recommend everyone pays the $20 a month to make your website ADA compliant.
Yep.
I felt unfair, but I get the game. So like, there's no personal feelings. We didn't know,
Right.
I think that's the thing is like, if you know and you make a choice not to do something, like if Jerry was like, we're not spending $20 to be compliant, then you deserve to get sued. But yeah, we were sued for our website not being ADA compliant. And we had to settle, and now our website is. But that was one that I wanted to fight also, where I had created an argument in my head.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, no.
We're not doing yeah.
And then, but I was involved with the settlement because I was like, we're not going, no, because if you guys are trying to pay this, whoever's doing this,
right.
we're not rewarding this behavior.
Yeah.
Because we can poke holes in the claim. I was like, there's no that was the thing. I was like, I was like, is this statutory? Which it probably is, but it was like I should have read more about it.
It's one of those things where
but
just
there was no
enough.
damages.
Yeah,
I was like, there's no damages
Yeah, what are their
here.
damages?
Like,
Yeah.
was someone not able to order a pillow? Just tell me that. And I was like, and I will take care of. Well, I guess that's the reason. But I was like, that didn't happen. Like, no one has not been able to use our website and was hurt. And also, if they couldn't buy our pillow, how do their damages reach here?
Right. See, that almost sounds like you being a lawyer and having a law degree and keeping your license active probably makes things more difficult for you because you know just a little too much.
Yeah, to accept, because the damages thing that Jerry didn't understand. Jerry's like, well, that's just what we have to pay him to be done. And I'm like, yeah, but they would never be able to.
He's thinking of it like business, and you're like, no,
I'm
they
like,
can't
but they
prove
couldn't
damages.
prove that. They would never be able to prove that in court, and it would never get this high, especially, with all the facts of it. So that was, I guess, our most recent one. And now I try to tell people, you've got to pay $20 to make it compliant.
So there's a lot of lawyers that, and probably some listening to the CLE, that are going to go through a career change at some point in their journey. What advice would you give to them, sort of transitioning from I think a lot of lawyers would rather do anything than be a lawyer sometimes. And it's just kind of like transitioning into a different area. Or do you find that, your law degree and your knowledge just sort of permeates every area of your life?
I think you should do what you want to do. And you're just not going to find a lot of people that do it. I just spoke to a group of real estate agents, big real estate agents. And a lot of them came up to me and they were like, excuse me, sorry, I shouldn't be drinking so much soda.
That's all right.
The carbonation. But they were like, hey, when I decided to leave my marketing firm, they were like, I had a great job at this. I had a 15-year career at the marketing firm, but I wanted to be a real estate agent. And she was like, my mom had the toughest time with it. Like, my mom was so distraught and she just like couldn't understand and she was so scared for me. And now she was like, and I did like, she's making a lot of money now as a real estate agent. She's doing great and she's happy. And she's like, it wasn't even about the money, Craig. Like, I'm just doing something that I really enjoy now.
Right.
And another guy, he was from Costa Rica, and he was like, I was a bartender at like a Costa Rican resort, which like is a great job to have. And he was like, when I left to start my real estate firm, my friends all laughed at me. And he just like listed like the most expensive home ever listed in Costa Rica. And it's scary. And I guess my point of that is you're not going to find a lot of people in your life that encourage you to do it because honestly, it's scary for them. So it's either like based out of fear or jealousy. And, if you put your ideas out there in the universe, it does draw negativity sometimes. Like people are like, why you and not me?
Well, when they don't understand, if people don't understand why you would want to do something, but and
so like, yes, you should be financially secure and do it responsibly. But if you're doing it because you think you should for like practical reasons or something, that's one thing. If you want to switch up because that's what you want to do, or your dream was to always like hang your own shingle, or like, you know, like have your firm or start a firm with your law school friend. Like if you want to do something, I think everyone in this, you know, atmosphere is smart enough to do it, to make that decision. And I think you should. Like, just because certain people worked, you know, a certain way 100 years ago and we fell into that routine doesn't mean we all have to do it.
Right.
There's plenty of examples out there of people going off the beaten path and doing okay. Sure, a lot of people fail, but then you get rid of that what if.
Right.
You know, like, especially with a law degree.
And you learn that failing doesn't kill you. You know,
Yeah.
that's sometimes a fear of failure, I think, is what stops people more than actually failing themselves.
I think my girlfriend makes fun of me because I have the delusional aspect of that, where I think I could go be like a race car driver
Me too.
or something.
I'm like, I'm convinced I could
And
fly a
she's
jet
like,
plane.
yes,
It's the optimism
I think
bias.
I could land the plane if I
I'm the
needed
same
to.
way, yeah.
But I know that there's a fear of failure. But you know, at your core, like, you know you're good enough for it. And I think, you know, the most fun thing in the world is doing something that you enjoy.
You know, I've found like I try to ask myself, am I making a fear-based decision or a love-based decision or something? And if it's a fear-based decision, it's almost always the wrong one.
It's a good way to look at it. And,
Yeah.
you know, and having like conversations with different parts of yourself.
So I want to talk about some mental health and wellness. I remember my first day of law school, they called us all in and we were all in like the big assembly, and they handed out the suicide hotline, the Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, what have I done? Like, I worked so hard to get here. What have I done?
And they tell you the stats.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
You're first, you're just like, I paid, like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, this is so depressing
Like,
already.
challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
To not be one of those people.
Right.
Not to be one of those people, obviously.
Right. In your journey, both as an entrepreneur and as a reality TV star, you've openly discussed challenges relating to mental health and wellness, including your struggles with Adderall that we talked about. And I'd like to know, I think a lot of attorneys have dealt with that too. I mean, you work up a case for 2 years, you take it to a jury trial, you get, you know, a jury, and they decide against you, and it's like, that's 2 years of there's a lot of mental health struggles that attorneys have that I feel are very probably similar to some of the things you struggle with in reality TV.
I think just being like kind to yourself. For me, there's an app called Reframe, and it taught me about your brain. Basically, my goal was to change my relationship with alcohol, but what it did is it taught me like why I behave certain ways and why I feel certain ways. And what it does is it teaches you like that neural pathways are real, and and the way you talk to yourself and the things that you do, it like you can remap your brain and it works. And to understand almost like why you do certain things and to not be hard on yourself about it, like instead of fighting it and just like accepting it and working it, like that app really changed my life. But also, like, I always thought therapy was dumb, because I'll just be honest, because I already knew what was wrong with me.
Well,
right?
I think we're the kind of people, we think we're so smart.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know what I'm doing.
And I always thought, and it sounds bad, but it was the truth. Every time I tried it, I thought I was smarter than the person I was talking to. Where I was like, we don't need to sit here and figure out what's wrong with me. I'll tell you everything.
I know what's wrong with me. Yeah.
I just need the tools to fix it.
Yeah.
But
that's also intellectualizing.
Right.
And also very easy.
And I was, you know, and I was wrong. It just wasn't working for me. And so I finally found the right therapist. And it just worked for me to get me to a point of like calmness and like back to a baseline to like reset. Because, you know, like something had happened on one of the shows where I felt like it was so unfair. That being in the shower is my peaceful place. Like that's my serenity. And it stole my peace. Like I couldn't get out of my head in my shower.
You have that feedback loop.
Oh my God. And like, I'm sure like if you were working a case for 2 years, the same thing. Like it just was like, it felt like, you know, a bad breakup. Like you just couldn't get it out of your head.
Because you can't fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so talking to the right therapist, and it was over the computer, which was cool. But then I thought like making eye contact was weird, and like I just couldn't, like I was better on the phone. So he was like, all right, let's talk on the phone.
Right.
So I would just put it on my Bluetooth or my speakerphone and just like pace and walk. But really, it's just like, you're so, like, now that I talk about it, I realize that so many people are so similar. Like, everyone's dealing with it, basically.
Right,
Like,
but I feel like a lot of attorneys are particularly afraid to talk about it because they don't want to show any signs of weakness.
Right.
Because so much is built on your reputation.
I mean, it's the same thing we do with the veterans, like, or
Yeah.
like the active service men and women, like,
Right.
same thing. They're like, but what if we talk about it, like, we don't want to get in trouble or be seen as weak, you know?
And I think you've been so successful and people have really enjoyed watching you because you do wear your heart on your sleeve and you have shown vulnerability on TV and it's very authentic. How do you, I guess, how do you learn how to not look at comments or read Reddit or like, that has to be a skill that you have to learn.
Yeah, it's actually, we talked to, I think, someone one time, and they compared it to cutting. They were like
That
reading.
actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they were like reading comments online is like cutting. They were like, you do it and you're well aware you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
But you still do it. And the thing is you will read 100, this is the thing that I realized, you will read 100 nice things or 100 nice reviews about your business. You don't care. You think you care, and it's fun, and you get a little dopamine hit, but the one that stops you in your tracks is the bad one, and that's gonna haunt you the rest of the day.
And why don't, like, it's so interesting because it's like, that's exactly right. You read, I'll read reviews of the podcast or whatever, or we'll talk to jurors afterwards, and
Yeah.
like 7 jurors will be like, that was amazing, blah, blah, and then the one juror is like, well, I think you could.
Yeah, and that's what you focus on. And so I have gotten to the point where, like, there was definitely a time when I didn't realize I was addicted to opening Reddit, right? I had it on my phone, and it was part of my routine. Open your phone, click Instagram, click Reddit. And for me, and it's the same like with like business reviews and stuff, you could read one thing and it might not be true, and it affects the way you treat others. Like, my girlfriend and I are both on different TV shows, and I would see something like about our relationship or something. And one time I like let it affect how I treated her. Like I called her and I was mad about someone's opinion about something she did on her phone. And like that day I was like, now you're letting people's comments affect your real life and your reality. And you're better than that. And so I like deleted it, and you just can't look at it. Because you don't need to read the good, like, that's not to say this isn't constructive criticism,
Right.
where you're like interviewing like clients or like maybe jurors that want to help you do better,
Right.
or like someone that's like, hey, I really like this pillow, but I would have done this differently. They're there to hurt you. And yeah, it's like basically that's always stuck with me. They're like, it's like cutting, because you're gonna read until you get hurt, and then that's your process. You're gonna read,
Right.
Open this app, and
you
do
just
that.
create that feedback loop and do it over and over again.
So I hate feeling misunderstood. It drives me crazy. And so yeah, it really affected my mentality. And so now I try to concentrate on interpersonal connections. And I'm like, all the people that said hi to me today or at the grocery store, like, that's fun. Like, I'm not going to steal like, I spoke to someone at the Paralympics. She was this sweetheart, and like, she's like, she's a little different. And she runs an Instagram page and has all of these followers that love her.
Yeah.
And she turned her Instagram off for 3 months because of how mean people were. And I told her, and I said, look, you're now stealing the joy that you give to all of those people that love you because of these mean people.
You're letting them win.
So just block them. And like, I know it's easier said than done, but that stuck to her. And she messaged me. They actually live here in Nashville, but she was like, thank you for telling me that, because I didn't even think that I was stealing like the happiness I was providing.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't, that's a really, really good point. How do you think the reality TV industry and the legal profession can better address and support individuals facing these issues? Like you're talking about very, very open your struggles with Adderall, like your mental struggles. What can we do better?
I guess incentivize dealing with it. I think there's a lot of like, what's the point? At least in my like how I would address stuff. Like, sure, I could get better, but like, it's easier to just stay doing what I'm doing. But then I went to the point where like I really wanted to be better, but I still didn't know what to do.
Right.
I think
like that though, incentivize.
I think incentivizing, like maybe, whether it's like a CLE credit or something. I mean, I know we have to do like mental health and wellness, but maybe make it, it's an absurd idea, but if you go to an AA meeting that is run by the bar,
right.
which I know that they do that and
No,
stuff.
they do. They have resources,
But like maybe give you a reason so that like you have to justify walking in the door. So for me, if I was getting a credit for going, I would be able to go to that meeting a lot easier than if I wasn't going for credit.
Right.
Because then I'd have to admit to myself that I was an alcoholic.
Right. Right.
And that's become really hard. That's just a challenge for me. Like I need to trick myself. Like the app I did, Reframe, it turned it into like a game.
They gamifies it.
Yeah. And like, so I think thinking off the beaten path. So you still apply the same principles once you get somewhere there. But like for me, if I was sitting in a circle at an AA meeting that wasn't for like a credit, I realize that to all these people I'm with, I just admitted that even though it's not true, like it doesn't mean that being there. I just admitted that I have a problem to all these people. And now I'm like, do I have to explain myself to them? If you have like a half-hour credit that you can get, in your brain, you're like, well, they don't know that I'm like not here just for their credit.
Right, you can trick your brain.
Yeah, so maybe gamifying it.
I mean, I did that with my Aura Ring. I had a horrible time making myself go to sleep. I hate it and it's like, I need the sleep to be able to do things, but it gives you a grade on how well you sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm so competitive with myself.
Right.
I want an A at sleep. So that, I totally get what you're saying. It's gamifying it.
I think thinking outside, I mean, even when I studied for the bar, like I used Themis, which was like a game-oriented, like 20-minute lesson thing. I think just accepting that the old ways might not work. Like for me, I want to learn how to tell people that it's not just like sober or nothing. Because for me, my entire life has changed from changing my relationship with alcohol. Because like, am I sober? No, but I certainly as heck don't drink like I used to.
Right.
But there's not really, I don't know how to like articulate that yet.
So it sounds like you're not using alcohol as like a crutch anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It teaches you to earn your drinks. And so maybe with like mental health, the same approach can be taken. And I do see a movement with that where like, you can do it on your phone or something like that.
Yeah. So it sounds like your charity work and philanthropic efforts have really improved your life. How would you sort of recommend and encourage other lawyers to get involved in that sort of thing? Because we're all so busy. I mean, I've got billable hours. I'm a partner in a law firm, and it's hard sometimes to set aside time for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it makes it all worth it. Like you feel so good when you come from something, whether it's like a food drive or a clothing drive. Like sometimes I work with this group Upstart in Charleston, and like, it's a closet clean out. My mom's like, all right, Craig, like, could someone else use that piece of clothing? And finally, like, I'm trying not to be a hoarder. And I'm like, yes, if I need it again, you can just go buy it. And so I'll take my clothes and like give them out. And like you work with people from all walks of life. And you just leave feeling better. But, whether it's the animal shelter or veterans organization or like Special Olympics, whatever it is, I guess there's no way to explain it until you do it, but it will hook you.
Right.
And then you'll be like, all right, like this
is why. It was time well spent.
Yeah, this is why I work so hard. So now that I can like go help out here or whatever it may be.
Looks like we have a few questions.
It's a good thing for small businesses too. If you do start your small business, give a little bit of proceeds to a local charity and they hold slots open, even if your law firm does this, on the local news for like Sunday morning shows or Saturday morning shows. And so if you just say like, portion of my proceeds are going to the animal shelter, you actually can start to do local news outlets.
Smart. Let's see this question. Does your contract, this is a question from the audience, does your contract cover only the 4 months of filming or does it extend to a full year to account for promotional activities and other obligations? I don't know if you can answer that.
I can't play myself on another reality show without their permission.
Right. So there's an exclusivity.
Yeah, well, I have a great relationship with NBC, fortunately, and like I just filmed a movie and I do like other shows.
Wait, you did a movie?
Yeah.
Can you talk about it?
It's called Tuesday's Flu. I play a gambler that owes a bookie money, and it used to be called Tuesday's Flu because after Monday Night Football was your last chance to win your money back. And this Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead was who I was filming with, and he was like, Craig, you've been woken up hungover before, and I'm sure you've owed someone money before. Just channel
Right.
that. And it was just such a fun experience. So I hope to do more of that. But like they were fine with that. But
Right.
you know, if all of a sudden I was like
I
popping
take it
up,
you had to get permission or no?
yeah.
'Cause
Well,
it was
it's a
scripted.
respect thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had to, but it's just, you know, you respect that. So, yeah, like if they want to start filming again, they can, you know, come film you, but they have to like pay you too. So like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it extends past just your principal photography.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions for you. I know, I think my answer to this, but what Bravo personality would do the best and worst in a deposition?
Oh my gosh, that's a crazy. I think Ramona would be pretty bad at it.
Oh my God, terrible. I've read Lisa Vanderpump's deposition from the Brandy Glanville lawsuit.
really?
She was good.
Yeah, I don't. I
She was
just
good.
stay away. I don't even know what happens with that. But I think Ramona would be hardest to coach.
That would just, you'd just be sitting there like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what is she gonna say?
And then Sonia would probably be the most entertaining person to have in the room. I think her deposition would probably go viral eventually one day.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you had to cross-examine Andy Cohen during a reunion, what would your first question be? I guess if you got to cross-examine.
Did you take any medication today?
Can you answer all of these questions fairly and accurately?
Yes. No, I think that would be fun. I would love to host, and I think that's. I'm trying to work laterally outside of reality TV because a lot of the talents that I had that made me a good reality star haven't been translated outside of it yet. So I just got to go host the Paralympics, which was awesome.
Oh, amazing.
And I'm trying to do more, but I obviously ever since I, basically stopped drinking, my opportunities have skyrocketed.
Right.
Because they can trust me to go do stuff and it not make it like a party.
Right.
And so I would love to host like a 90-day reunion one day or something.
I know, wouldn't that be so much fun? I would love to do that. You'd be great at it.
Thank you.
You'd be great at it. So I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you so much coming to do this. I mean, it's so nice to have a CLE where you're not just forced to do it. It's such a good idea.
I was honored to be asked, and I'm excited to look at the programs. And
Yeah.
I heard there's one on space law, and I would love that.
I want to be a space lawyer.
We work with Space Force now, and I know nothing about it, like from
Right.
the Hope for the Warrior side. So I think it's a really cool thing that
Yeah.
they're doing. I hope everyone had a nice time. I know we don't have our audience here to
Right.
to
But we appreciate y'all.
so that verbal affirmation.
Right.
But I hope it was okay.
No, you did great. You were great. So a couple more quick questions.
Sure.
I know my answer to this, but do you ever think we'll see lawyers practicing law on reality TV? Do you think we'll ever have a reality show about a law firm?
I do, because TV is evolving and like unscripted pays for scripted now. And as in that's just the sheer size of unscripted television, and more professions are starting to take chances and being like, hey guys, being on TV is actually as much of an asset as it is a liability now, and
Yeah.
some chances it is an asset. When I decided to do it, I was giving up that field for a little bit. I knew, at least without starting my own firm. But I
Right.
think there's areas in the country, like I think Florida, like California, maybe different places, you might all of a sudden see like a law firm on television, and they just work out how to. I think it would probably start in a way where it was back filmed a little bit.
Right. So you could maintain confidentiality.
Yeah, but then if the cases play out or something, and you get and you
public
do
record.
it correctly,
Yeah.
A year later it could air.
Right.
I don't see that as a far off possibility.
Yeah, fascinating. So you just talked about acting. What's next for you?
I'm trying to figure it out. I would love to do scripted stuff. I read for a show about Navy SEALs on television, and almost got it. But I would love to. That's my dream is to do scripted stuff. I really love the production of everything.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 12 years.
Well, and you have to be comfortable in front of cameras at this point.
Well, and so certain people are taking chances on that. They're like, you don't have to unlearn any bad habits, and
Right.
you're already comfortable with a camera in front of your face. Let's see if maybe we can bring the Bravo market into like whatever project we're working on. I want to continue to grow Sewing Down South into an entire home decor company. The 501c3 would be awesome.
I would love some law-related pillows,
Yeah.
like Scales of Justice or something.
That would be great, like
Yeah.
a legal collection. But
Yeah.
I think like a nonprofit or starting like a new curriculum for sewing, like Angela Angotti has a curriculum that goes with his gardening program, so it does really well in schools. But maybe like a hosting gig or something. Like I don't want to leave TV, but I want to evolve in a way, and to see our shows evolve in a way that like, they're following this next
Right.
chapter of our lives.
Right. Well, I'm excited to see what you do next. And
Thanks.
I just thank you again for being here.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
great.
obviously the far off dream is to have a boutique firm one day, but
Yeah.
that's one day. We'll see.
One day.
Yes.
Well, that's exciting. Well, I'm Angela Angotti, and so on behalf of myself and Craig Conover, I just want to thank you for attending today's CLE. So follow Sprout Ed for the latest course offerings, and have a wonderful day.